Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Cryptocurrent. Your host here, Richard Carthon. And today I got a guest all the way out in Boston, usually lives in San Francisco, but as y'all know, we are in COVID times, but working on a really awesome project called Namebase. Excited to learn more about it. We have Tieshun. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Richard.
Of course. Well, before we dive and learn a little bit more about Namebase, tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us some background.
Yeah, my background's primarily in engineering and entrepreneurship. I kind of have a weird story, actually. When I was in high school, I ended up leaving to start a company that ended up going through Y Combinator, which was this like startup accelerator. They funded Airbnb and Reddit and DoorDash.
Really great accelerator. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had a super great experience there. And then that was doing a company in the recruiting space. After that, I left to go and study at MIT, studied math and computer science there for a few years, where I met my co-founder. And then after studying engineering for a bit, I then left to start Namebase with my co-founder, Anthony Liu. And so now we've been working on Namebase for the past 3 years. In summary, what Namebase is a domain registrar for domain names on the Handshake protocol. So Handshake's this new blockchain that is basically this like decentralized domain name system. So like google.com, facebook.com, etc. These are all different domain names, and they're all part of the system called the domain name system, which is abbreviated DNS for short. And Handshake is this new decentralized DNS protocol that we basically fell in love with. As engineers, we kind of found it and fell in love with it and started working on it. And we realized, in order for it to succeed, we need to make it super easy for anyone to kind of get started and play around with the protocol. And so that's why we started building Namebase, and we've been doing that for the past 3 years. And so that's like a really, really abbreviated, short history of myself.
Man, that's awesome. So first, I'm going to go retouch on a couple of things just so everyone listening can truly understand the grasp of how awesome this man is. So left high school to go do a startup, got all the way into Y Combinator, which is extremely, extremely hard to get into. And I'm sure it was a great experience, would help launch a ton of knowledge to bring you to successfully launch Namebase. And now have launched Namebase, which has a ton of practicality even right now with everything going in the current landscape of 2021 around censorship. So, I want to start there. I want to start the conversation there of why now, like why is Namebase so important right now in the current landscape that is the world and around Web 3.0 and censorship.
Yeah, totally. It's really crazy that we're having this conversation now, just because the current political zeitgeist is so topical for what we're trying to do, right? Like the whole point of the protocol is, censorship resistance and security and true ownership over your names, right? Which is really like your identity on the internet. And what we're seeing is, these platforms like Twitter and et cetera are censoring even major politicians, right? And regardless of where you stand on the political spectrum, that's something that is going to be a cause of concern for everyone. And it's super interesting that this is happening now, because when we got started 3 years ago, censorship was something that like crypto natives understood and, technologists understood. But you talk to a normal person. We actually did this. We went on the street and we were asking people about how they felt about, Facebook and all these other platforms, whatnot. And most people just really don't care at all. And that was just kind of what we expected would be the case. It's just that there's a few people who actually really understand the problem and understand the issues that censorship can cause and would try to fight against it. But, for the majority of people, they wouldn't really know even what it is or even think about it. And now 3 years later, our thesis was really that like this trend of censorship would continue over the next few years, over the next decade. We've started seeing that even over the past 10 years, right? The internet at first was very free and open. Over time, more and more walled gardens popped up, more and more censorship happened. But even 3 years ago, it was something that, not many people were talking about. Now, just 3 years later, it's, 50% of America, right? I think more conservatives than liberals are kind of talking about it, right? But it is something where it's like now everyone is talking about censorship. Everyone's aware of it. Everyone is wondering, okay, is it okay for these platforms to be censoring everyone in the way that they are doing now? And even applications or even infrastructure companies like AWS are censoring apps that are, legally sound, but, maybe politically are in disagreement with what the platforms want, because the platforms themselves have a political leaning. So it's this crazy issue. And if you think about just from a systems level of thinking, information flows are the most important aspect of system functioning correctly. And now if you're actually able to control and modify the information flows, you can drastically affect how the system behaves. And so that's what's happening now. And basically the reason why Handshake is important, why what we're trying to do is important, is because it basically counteracts that and gives people the ability to own their identity online, own their domain name, be able to fight against that, have a name that can't be censored. And that's what we're trying to provide to everyone who's interested.
Yeah. And just like you said, with it being timely, when I was going and checking out the website, which is something I definitely want you to kind of walk me through right now, is like, okay, so I personally, with my own domain and with other things, my host has always been like a GoDaddy, right? That's where I would go and buy the things and then build everything on top of. So if I wanted to transition off of that and now use Namebase, tell me a little bit about how that works. Like walk me through, how would I be able to come on your platform, get my name that I want or my domain that I want, and then be able to effectively set something up on it.
Yeah, totally. So the cool thing is you don't need to just transition. So you have the website cryptocurrent, and you have that on a traditional domain name. You don't have to give that up, right? Because the traditional domain name system is still going to be around. What Handshake is basically, you can think of it as like a parent to the existing naming level. So at the top of the domain name hierarchy, you have your top level domain names. Those are the domain extensions. So for example, .com, .io, .net, .co. These are all TLD extensions. And what Handshake does is it allows you to actually register new TLD extensions that haven't been registered before on the blockchain. And what you can do is you can register, for example, maybe you can register .current. So you have crypto.current, or maybe you register cryptocurrent. And you can actually point that to your servers so that if anything ever happened to your cryptocurrent domain name, the tradition on GoDaddy, you now have this Handshake site as like a backup even, right? Or you can have it as like the main site, but you can actually point the records to your server so people can always find it. And the benefit of having that is that Handshake name, the interesting thing is a domain name in the traditional system, you can never truly own. When you buy a domain name, you're really just buying the right to rent that every year, indefinitely, right? You have to keep on paying the fee every year to have it, but it can be taken away from you if the registrar, if GoDaddy gets a cease and desist from a big company or whatever, for whatever reason, they can actually, or even if someone just files a complaint against your domain name, they can actually just take that down. And even big traditional companies that are there are a number of email service providers, and I think Zoho had an issue with this just a year or two ago. Someone had filed a complaint, and it was just a single complaint, and they actually took that entire domain name down, and their business was crippled during that 3-day period, which is this really terrible time because small businesses rely on their technology, and so this is something that can happen with traditional domain names. And with Handshake, you can basically go and take it, point it to your servers, and then to access it, you can either be running either be doing the full crypto native version of it, which is running the full node and resolving the domain name through the full node, or you can go and use a browser extension. There are a number of browser extensions that go and support Handshake in your browser, or you can actually go and use a Handshake gateway. So for example, hns.to is a Handshake gateway, and I'll just share an example. We have let me do kc.hns.to. So this is a site that's on Handshake. It's actually a tool that we created called D-Links, which is kind of a decentralized link tree. And the cool thing is this site that I just sent. If you're listening, you can kind of maybe follow along. Just go to kasey.hns.to in your browser, and this is a site that's resolved on Handshake. The storage is using Sidecoin Skynet, which is a decentralized storage layer. So now you're pairing decentralized storage with decentralized naming. But basically the TLDR of that is if you have your site on Handshake, you can not only access it natively through Handshake, but you can also just in traditional web, type in your Handshake name.hns.to and it'll resolve as well. And so that's how you can kind of get your site onto Handshake.
That's awesome. And one of the things with that, just to talk about, GoDaddy a second ago and why I see this as being powerful. So for the cryptocurrent website that we had, somehow, some way, I had 2-factor authentication get put on my account and I never personally set it up. Now, when that happened, I had to go through this process to basically let them get back in my account. And this took 34 days. And I was furious.
Oh,
It's
wow.
I literally could not get into my account. And so like, it's very timely, even with us talking of like, I see how important this is. Cause just like that, like your business could be taken like that. And there's nothing that you could do to have like true control. Like, or even, the whole reason I got into crypto in the first place is like, once you own your crypto and you put on your, your cold wallet, whatever that is, no one can ever take that from you. That's yours. Like you truly are in control of how that's, operating and functioning. So I definitely see a lot of practicality to this. And also thank you for the example of showing how, using Handshake, you're able to build websites using the domain that you're able to make on Namebase. But, I think there's a couple of other use cases that we mentioned, that you mentioned to me before we got on the call, of how this is kind of turning into its own economy of sorts as well. Can you kind of speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, totally. The really interesting thing with Handshake is, and so just to clarify, Handshake is the decentralized DNS protocol, and you can kind of think of Namebase as a layer on top. We just make it easy to use, similar to how Coinbase or Binance might make it easier to get tokens on other protocols and start using them. And the really interesting thing is there's a lot of different stakeholders, right? There's developers that are interested, right? Because the domain name system is very technical. There are investors who will invest in the coin. And then there's also domainers who are interested in getting the domain names themselves, either for using them directly for various use cases, right? Like I just showed you kc.hns.to. Casey is actually a crypto investor, and she set up this like decentralized link tree page on Handshake, which is really neat. But you can also participate in because they're also assets. They're basically NFTs, and they have value as part of them. And the interesting thing is not only can you go and spend money getting the name initially, you can also go and resell it. And it's really been fascinating. I'll share a graphic with you right after we tweeted this out the other day. But basically, the secondary marketplace activity over the past 6 months has been growing at over 60% month over month. So, and last month it literally doubled to around 750,000 HNS, which was worth HNS around 10 cents per coin. So it's about, or it's a little bit over. So it's about like $80,000 worth of trades. And the crazy thing is that on average, every name that's selling on the secondary marketplace. So these metrics are all from the Namebase marketplace. If you go to namebase.io and you go to the domain search, you can see the marketplace listings. But every name sells on average for 10x the initial price that I was registered for. So that $70,000 worth of transactions, that came from people initially investing only $7,000. And then they 10x that basically. And so we know just from talking to community members that there are people, spending their time full time on this because it's still such a, the entire space is so nascent, right? Very few people have heard of Handshake. And so there's just like a lot of upside. The number one domainer in the world, actually, like the traditional domainer, this guy sells millions of dollars worth of domain names every year. And he's actually participating in the ecosystem now too. He's actually getting Handshake names as well. And we tweeted at him and he was saying, we were asking him if he was selling the names, but he's seen this kind of story before. Traditional domainers, they all made money by getting early into new domain names. And so he's kind of seen this story before and he's like, I'm not selling until this like 100x's because it would be foolish to sell this early. So he's not participating there. But basically the entire space is really still undervalued, but people are just flipping them full time. One of the customers was saying he just got his high school son on it. And this guy just, started with like a few dollars worth and is now flipping and getting like hundreds of dollars every month just by, identifying good names that people might want and getting them. Because there's a value in doing that because the Handshake registration has an auction process that takes 2 weeks to complete. So if you go through that process, you identify a good name, you get it, and then you can put it on the marketplace and someone can buy it instantly afterwards. There's intrinsic value there, right? Now you don't have to wait for that time delay. So people are doing that and there's this really interesting economy developing. And I think it's super cool just because I'm a big fan of markets and especially markets for like alternative assets and NFTs. And it's been really amazing to see that developing in the Handshake ecosystem.
No doubt. I mean, my wheels are turning even just thinking about like all the different ways to be able to get in some early like this, because especially with this Handshake protocol, right? It's a one time you own it. You don't have to like keep doing this reoccurring fee after you own it. Like that is yours. And like, I think there's power in equity, there's power in ownership. And it's cool that y'all been able to first identify like this market, but then able to build a protocol on top of it to make it that much easier to go and do these things and make economy for people who are discovering it. So, I mean, kudos to y'all for setting this up. I think this is extremely, extremely impressive. And just like everyone that's listening, definitely go give it a listen. And if you are listening, remember, we are recording this on YouTube now. If you want to check this out and be able to see all the various things that are going on, I'm also going to make sure to share all the links that are being shared here in the show notes as well. But on that, there is a lot going on in 2021 already, especially in the crypto blockchain space. And there's a lot. I mean, I think 2021 is one of the most bullish years in the space that we've had in a long time. And, we're still at the very beginnings. What are some things that are on your horizon that you think other people should be aware of?
Yeah, I think it's very much going to be a year of DeFi and DWeb. So DeFi, you're all familiar with, right? Uniswap, Compound, all these other things, right? It's a decentralization of finance, making that accessible and democratizing access to that and being permissionless for it. And if you follow, Balaji Srinivasan, who's actually one of our investors, he talks a lot about the trend of the decentralized web as well. Basically, over the past 6 years, a lot of these technologies that have been developing are now getting to the point where they're actually really easy to use. So I mentioned, I shared that KC.HNS.2, that D-Link profile earlier. That is using the Handshake names for the decentralized naming layer, and then it's using Skynet for the decentralized storage layer. And 12 months ago, Skynet did not exist. So it was actually, if you want to create like a decentralized website, it was super hard to do. We actually had one of our MIT interns, he created something similar to what we created with the D-Link, and it took him a month to do. So that was just 2 years ago that took him a month. Now we were able to use Skynet with Handshake, and it literally only took a few days to set up that application. And we actually have this new product, it's completely free to use, where anyone can go and create their own D-Link. It's like this decentralized link tree in a few seconds. You don't have to be technical to do it. And then you'll have a website on the decentralized web. So the trends that I'm seeing for the decentralized web are, one, the technology is finally getting to a place where it's super easy to use so that it can actually have mass adoption. And then two, you also need that, political zeitgeist, right? That cultural zeitgeist for it to be important. And that has also finally come into fruition. It is, nearing its peak in terms of just like the amount of talk in the news about, the importance of decentralization and censorship resistance and all of that, right? Because people are finally feeling the pain. Normally, censorship is something that is a very abstract concept, because especially if you're in the US. Actually, if you're outside the US, people are usually familiar with that because every country around the world basically censors their internet pretty heavily. But in the US, it wasn't really felt strongly until this year. So now we finally have this, the cultural zeitgeist moment where this is becoming relevant. And you pair that with the fact that this technology is finally going and live and functional. And I think that 2021 will definitely be the year of DeFi and DWeb. And there'll be a lot of really interesting developments in this space.
For sure. And, if you hear something enough times, it's something you need to pay attention to. And the last several speakers that I have keep on harping, especially on DeFi. 2020 was a year of DeFi, at least entering the space, and people starting to understand it. But it still had a lot that it needs to build to be able to complete what I call like the circle of checkpoints to like continue to flow through the business model that it has. And I think we're getting a lot closer to it. And I think people are finally starting to crack that nut. And another early in 2020, I had a lot of Web3 people, speakers with different projects that were telling me constantly about Web3, and to look in the next 1 to 2 years after they've built out the models and shown that it works, how much faster things are gonna move. And just through this conversation, all of that's starting to come back to me. And it's cool to hear you say how quickly things are coming to fruition. Like you saying that you had an intern, it took them a month to build something, and now you're able to build something in a couple of days. Like, that is awesome. And it's only going to continue to get faster. And just like you said, with the political sphere of the zeitgeist and the point of ownership and not being able to censor something, like it sounds like the perfect storm of timing. Like in a lot of ways, crypto's been around for a decade, a little bit over a decade now. And we're at this inflection point where timing is starting to come in, but then also technology and ease of use is starting to get there. Like, and when you put all that together, you're starting to look at mass adoption. Because if you have timing with ease of use and people understanding it, and just a little bit of hype where people are wanting to learn and discover how you can get into it and then actually do it, I think we're just on this trajectory point of crypto becoming a little bit more mainstream. And that excites me, especially, being in the space for the last 3 years to just see it come full circle. So, I really do appreciate that narrative and be able to speak to it. I mean, it's exciting times to say the least.
Yeah, definitely. And the amazing thing is that these trends, they're not just technologies that you get to use and consume. The cool thing about crypto is that you actually can own a stake in it, right? You have exposure to the growth of this trend. If you have conviction, you can go and you can buy a Bitcoin, you can buy a Handshake name, you can own it and see what happens as it grows. And I think that's the coolest thing, because I personally am such a fan of the democratization of financial access. And that's something that we're seeing, where not only are you having democratization of the information access, but also the financial access, and they're actually intertwined. And that's just the coolest thing to me. And we're definitely going to see that happen more in 2021. So it's going to be an exciting year for sure.
No doubt. Well, I really do appreciate all the time and all the knowledge you dropped on us. And, everyone listening, you better go check out Handshake, and definitely better go check out Namebase on top of it. But, what is a final thought that you want to leave with all of our listeners here today?
Final thought is, I think lean in to crypto. It's funny. One of our investors, Eric Meltzer, he was sharing how, like, literally every year, he always would talk to so many people, and they're like, "Oh man, I got into crypto too late. Got into crypto too late. Got into crypto too late." And every year, it's gotten better and better, and that hasn't changed. And now it's like, wow, like Bitcoin's at 40K, everything is so up, right? Markets are improving. It feels like you're still in too late. And it's really not too late. We're still so early, right? The majority of people still are not super familiar with crypto, or they might know what Bitcoin is, but they have no clue what Ethereum or DeFi or anything else is. So I think that this entire space is just going to grow significantly. So whatever you're interested in, is it DeFi? Is it NFTs? Is it decentralized domain names? Is it Handshake? Is it whatever? Just lean in, because it's probably all going to grow from here. And the entire ecosystem is something that's just super exciting. So this is a great time to get started, or get even further in if you haven't been further in so far.
Absolutely. I think that's an absolute gem of a final thought. Lean in, get involved, participate, continue to educate, and just take action. You're not too late. It's still early. I don't think crypto blockchain is going anywhere in the next decade. But people, we are starting to hit that switch of people are starting to pay attention. And like, this is that inflection point of like, right now is the time. You don't need to wait anymore. Like, let's get in, let's start moving and lean in and make sure that you're taking those first actions. So again, thank you so much for your time. What are some ways that people can connect with you and also learn a little bit about all of your various projects that you have going on?
Totally. Yeah, definitely. You can find me, you can find me at my dealing profile, tieshun.hns.to. So that's tieshun.hns.to. So I own the Tieshun name on Handshake. And that has a list of all of my links. So that has Namebase, that has my, another personal site, and then has my Twitter and whatnot. So that's a great place to find me. The Namebase Twitter is there as well. And you'll be able to find all that. And if anything ever happens to any of my profiles online, Tieshun will still be resolvable on Handshake. So you'll always be able to find me through that. And I'll be able to, if I get blocked on Twitter or whatever reason, I'll go to some other platform. You'll be able to find me through Tieshun on Handshake. So I would say just go there.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for dropping all the knowledge. And for everyone listening, stay cryptocurrent. Hey, cryptocurrent crew. You asked and we delivered. We have received multiple requests for access to cool crypto and blockchain projects that you could use immediately. Well, we have recently launched our partnerships page. If you go to our website and go to the partnerships tab, you'll be able to see multiple companies that have partnered with us to not only give you access to the cool products that they have to offer, but then also give you cool discounts to get started today. So please go to our website, go to the partnerships tab, and check out the various partners that we have today. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information on today's episode and all of our episodes, please visit us at www.crypto-current.co. You can also find a link in the show notes. Want to stay up to date in the latest news in cryptocurrency? Sign up for our newsletter today. You'll receive daily emails Monday through Friday that are personalized and curated content specific to you and your interest, powered by artificial intelligence. You can either go to our show notes or go to our website to sign up today. Are you an accredited investor looking to invest in cryptocurrency? Crescent City Capital can help. Go to crescentcitycapital.com for more information. I don't know if you've noticed, but the quality of our podcast each week are improving. I can only thank my amazing producer, Andrew DeRitter with DeRitter Productions, who has been putting all of this together. If you have any podcast, music, or audio needs, please go to DeRitterProductions.com. That's DERITTER Productions.com.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Cryptocurrent with Richard Carthon. We'll be back with more exciting developments from the world of blockchain and cryptocurrency next week. But until then, stay cryptocurrent.